Brush-stained fingers, colors entwined, a story told with each bold line. Canvas whispers, strokes demand the silent powers of a painter's hand. Another message, I thought, closing my locker. My secret admirer had outdone himself again. My name is Rain, a student at the local arts college, known around town for my love of poetry and selling paintings to chip away at my student debt. I've also earned a reputation as the first openly gay boy in my college year. Despite many suitors, love has always been elusive for me. I long for something real, something that surpasses the surface. For the past month, I've been receiving short yet unique poems signed only with the letter T. I wanted to know who this person was, but my attempts to uncover the poet's identity have been a complete failure. Who could it be? I wondered, tossing names around in my head. Maybe Mark from the sculpture class? Or Andy, the quiet nerdy guy from my own class? Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that the person behind the notes was the most handsome guy in school. I was wrapping up my latest investigation, waving goodbye to Andy after shadowing him for days, convinced he might be my secret poet. This quest is taking over my life, I muttered to myself, vowing to give it a rest. Part of me liked the mystery. It was oddly thrilling. But just as I was trying to talk myself out of continuing, I spotted someone standing by the lockers. His back was to me, and he was holding a piece of paper, smiling, as he carefully slid it into a locker. I froze. I found him. As he turned and walked towards me, I felt my heart stop for a moment. It was Trevor. With his emerald eyes and dark blonde hair, he looked like something straight out of a dream. I never imagined he'd be the one. Sure, he was charming and attractive, but creative and had a thing for me? The most romantic thing I'd ever heard about him was giving a single rose to a crush. Baffled was an understatement. I didn't know what to do. Had he noticed me watching? Should I confront him? I went to my next class, trying to clear my head. After all this time searching, could it really be him? Trevor was everything I dreamed of in a man. He studied the history of art, was also a painter, clearly had a poetic side, and his looks were a dazzling bonus. This game of his made him even more interesting in my eyes, and I wanted to try at least something to see where it went. I debated whether to approach him directly or keep playing along with his anonymous game. In the end, I decided I would leave him a puzzle, a challenge, scattered throughout the school. Let's see if he can keep up with me. Everything was ready. Arriving early, I carefully placed notes into Trevor's locker, creating a small labyrinth of riddles. Each clue led to the final destination, the park at sunset. I waited patiently. An hour passed. Had I made the riddles too challenging? A warm breeze swept through the spring air. Just as I began to doubt myself, I spotted Trevor in the distance, clutching the final clue in his hand, a wine opener. "Rain!" he called out, grinning as he closed the gap between us. Relief washed over me. He had accepted my challenge. "I wrote something for you," I said softly, clearing my throat before reciting. "The sky so blue and emeralds glow. Through every day I'll let it show. A bond so rare, a path so clear. Forever yours, I'll hold you near." Trevor stood still, surprised and unsure. I held up a bottle of wine, gesturing for him to join me and break the tension. "Wow, Rain," he said, smiling as he sat beside me. "I didn't know you had feelings for me." Playing coy, are we? I thought, amused but willing to go along. "You've always fascinated me, Trevor," I said, pouring him a glass. "A talented, kind, and beautiful man deserves the finest treatment." He blushed, which made my cheeks flush too. "Well," he said, leaning closer, "I've always found you intriguing, Rain. Closed-off people are sexier." His words made me smile. Our eyes met, lingering. His emerald green eyes, painted with hints of yellow, were mesmerizing, while mine, light blue, felt unremarkable in comparison. We didn't talk much. Maybe it was the weight of the moment, or perhaps neither of us knew what to say. The silence was awkward, yet oddly comfortable. Trevor didn't seem to realize I knew about the notes, and for now, I intended to keep it that way. Trevor and I fell into a relationship quickly, after just a few dates. Our connection felt instant, and before long, we were sharing passionate kisses. The notes kept coming, each one sweeter than the last, signed with the familiar T. But Trevor's behavior during time changed. From a somewhat caring boyfriend, now became a distant man. His focus was always on his popularity, and it became clear that we didn't share the same interests as I initially thought. Poetry, once a topic I figured we would both enjoy, quickly became a thing of the past. He'd dismissed it, joking that it was just rap for old people. Even when the connection felt distant, the notes kept me grounded, bringing back the warmth I felt when I first discovered Trevor was the author. One afternoon, I snuck up behind him, wrapping my arms around his waist. "Hey, starling," I whispered, kissing his cheek. "Hey, Rain," he said, spinning around to return the hug. "I was just talking about you." I didn't notice the three people standing beside him until he introduced them. "I was telling them how good of a painter you are. Nina and Brython here want a couple's portrait. You think you could do it?" I forced a smile, fighting the frustration building up. "No problem," I replied, already cursing under my breath. "I'll grab some supplies and be in touch." Trevor kissed me on the forehead, thanking me, while the others gave me nods that felt almost dismissive, like I was drawing stick figures, not a full portrait of two people. I sighed, trying to keep my cool. "I saw this awesome new laser tag place, maybe we could check it out." Trevor cut me off. "Oh, no can do. We're going to a basketball game tonight. You're welcome to join, but we'll probably get wasted." I paused, biting back my disappointment. "You go without me. I was planning to paint tonight anyway." I tried to hide my frustration. It wasn't that I hated basketball, but Trevor didn't even care about it. He just wanted an excuse to drink and complain about the refs. Besides, I'd learned the hard way that it wasn't worth going to events where I wasn't even really invited. Feeling let down, I headed to one of the art studios at the college, hoping to channel my mood into something on the canvas. The night ahead felt empty, and I needed to escape into my art. I wanted to use warm colors, yellow, green, and orange, to capture my mixed emotions. Sometimes they're bright, sometimes they're dull, just like the mood I was in. I lost myself into the brushstrokes, slowly bringing a sad deer to life on the canvas. As I worked, I heard the door creak open. "My apologies, I didn't realize anyone was here," came a voice from behind me. "No worries, come in if you want some company," I replied, not lifting my head from the painting. Footsteps echoed softly as they approached my canvas. "I see you're a Schenk enthusiast," the voice said with a smile. Confused, I turned around to find Trevor's brother standing in the doorway. He was quiet, clever, and a year younger than me. Trevor had never formally introduced us, so I always just called him Trevor's brother. "What are you talking about?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. He let out a small sigh, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. "Do you know who August Friedrich Schenk was? He painted animals like that, depressing ones. His colors weren't as vibrant, though." I slapped my forehead, feeling embarrassed, like I had missed an obvious answer. "Yeah, I know who he is, a true pride of Germany, and one of the painters I really admire. Guess I was just too lost in my thoughts to remember." "Don't mention it," he said, pausing to pull out a pair of clackers. He started fiddling with them, scanning the room as if searching for something. I took a moment to really look at him, completely in his own world. I couldn't help but wish I had that kind of tranquility. After a beat, he glanced over at me. "Other studios are taken and you're the only one here. Is it okay if I paint too?" I shifted my canvas to the corner, realizing I'd practically claimed the entire studio for myself. "Not at all," I said with a grin. "Thanks," he replied, hanging his bluish clackers on a nearby hook, then getting straight to work in silence. I figure I should break the ice, seeing as he was my partner's brother. I cleared my throat. "So, not much of a social butterfly, huh?" He looked at me. "Same as you, Rain. I'm doing homework on a Friday night." I laughed. "What a pair of losers, huh?" He smirked. "Yeah, I thought you'd be out with my brother." He's got an important basketball game, I said, defending Trevor as if he was my kid brother. I heard a sigh from Trevor's brother. Oh no, was he about to give me a lecture? Never saw you with someone like my brother, he said. What did that mean? Not wanting to dive into my relationship drama, I kept painting. The next couple of hours passed in easy conversation. Color contrast, artists who blew our minds, and the occasional pause as we passed acrylics back and forth. Well, I should head out. Nice chatting, Rain, he said, grabbing his jacket. Just as he was about to leave, I suddenly remembered something. Wait, I shouted down the hall, running to catch up. I never got your name. It's Travis, he said. Then he kept walking. I went back to the studio, still thinking about the conversation. I glanced at the canvas. I was curious about what Travis had been working on. He painted his clackers that were neatly placed on the hook in front of him, and a little further was a sketch of me. He'd been drawing me the whole time, and I had to admit, he was really good at realism. I couldn't shake off Travis's words from last night. Never saw you as someone like my brother. What did he mean by that? Suddenly, a pair of warm hands rested on my shoulders, followed by 2 soft kisses. Hello, my Prince Charming, Trevor said, his voice thick with the remnants of a hangover. I could see it in his eyes. He was struggling. I returned his kiss and wrapped my arms around him, wanting to make him admit something. I needed to understand why he was one person with me and a completely different one in the poems. These poems were literally the only thing that kept me fighting to preserve the relationship, but I figured that they were not enough. They weren't going to save our relationship. Want to come to my place after school? I whispered, playfully biting his ear, hoping to draw out his desire. Of course, he replied, kissing my hand and pulling me closer, his grip tightening around my waist. You know, we can't bang in the middle of the hallway, I teased. He sighed dramatically. Yeah. See you after class. We got to my apartment. Trevor's cologne lingered in the space, making my pulse quicken. As soon as the door closed behind us, his lips were on mine, his hands eager slipping under my clothes. I wrote a new poem for you, I whispered, trying to slow the rush of everything. He brushed it off with a smirk. I'm flattered, as always, but you don't have to do that. It's the least I can do after all you've done for me the past few months, I said, my fingers tracing the line of his jaw. He raised an eyebrow. Well, I don't like to brag, but being with me has raised your reputation around here. Imagine the doors that'll open once you graduate. I paused, confused. You're joking, right? He shrugged nonchalantly. Sure. Then, without missing a beat, he went back to unbuttoning my shirt, his lips trailing light kisses over my skin. I wanted to admit something about your secret, I started, but his kisses were relentless. I pushed him back, needing a moment to breathe. My heart skipped as his beauty caught me off guard again. What is it, Rain? He asked, impatience edging his voice. I know it was you who sent me the poems in my locker, I confessed. I thought you were one person, but now I see there's more to you. I admire your talent, your creativity. Trevor stopped in his tracks. He stared at me, then burst out laughing. What's so funny? I snapped, frustrated. And that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, he laughed, gasping for breath. Wait, is there a hidden camera somewhere? I saw you putting a piece of paper in my locker, I shot back. That was months ago, he said, waving me off. I saw the paper falling out of your locker. Probably it was meant to be put there in a rush. I picked it up, had a little laugh, and then put it back. It wasn't even a big deal, he shrugged. I wasn't the one writing them, but I recognized the handwriting in an instant. I was stunned. It made sense now. Trevor wasn't the poet. He just happened to be there at the wrong time. I felt a rush of emotions, betrayal, confusion, but at the end of it, I realized I let myself live in a fantasy. I built up this ideal of Trevor, the perfect poet, when he wasn't that person at all. You know who it is, don't you? I whispered. He looked at me, his eyes softening. Yeah, it's my brother, Travis. He's the one with the poetry obsession. I stood there, my mind racing, trying to process everything. Trevor took my face in his hands, his lips brushing my forehead. I'm tired of talking, he murmured. Can we just move on from this? I hesitated, still reeling. You're not mad that your brother sent me those poems? No, my brother's as straight as they come, Trevor said with a smirk. But good luck finding him a date. He couldn't land a hologram, let alone a real woman. His laugh made my stomach tighten, a sharp edge to it. It was a joke, but it felt cruel. He shrugged off my discomfort and grinned. Want to join me? He asked, already peeling off his shirt. His lips found my neck, the warmth of his touch sending a pulse through me. But I couldn't shake that thought in my head. I wanted to be present, to lose myself in the moment, but my mind kept racing. But I could not blame Trevor for my stupidity. Heck, I never asked him, and when I did, he said truthfully. Maybe I could give him the chance. My fingers traced over his back, trying to focus on the sensation. Then my gaze fell and my heart stopped. Hickeys, deep, dark ones, covered his back, a lot of them. My stomach turned. What's this? I pushed him away, fury rising. Trevor turned around, avoiding my gaze. What? The marks? It's nothing. We didn't go all the way, just some fun at the game, a few drinks, and one thing led to another. Is that how it's been the whole time? I was livid, my words sharp. No, he said quickly. It's not like that. It was just a hookup. It means nothing. You're the one I'm really into, Rain. You're the one who matters. I pushed him away, grabbing my clothes as I rushed to put them on. You didn't think about how I feel in all of this? You didn't even ask if I'm okay with that lifestyle? Trevor opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off, my voice trembling but firm. We need to go our separate ways, Trevor. If you can cheat on me all the time, then I obviously don't mean that much to you. Please, leave. He froze for a second, his jaw tightening. Then, his face darkened with anger. Well, it's clear where your priorities are, he shot back, voice bitter. You're more into my little brother than me. You've betrayed both of us. His words hit harder than I expected, but I could see through it. He was trying to gaslight me, turn the blame onto me like he always did when things didn't go his way. He was the one in the wrong, yet somehow he always managed to make me feel like I was the problem. I could feel his eyes boring into me, but I didn't back down. You know what? You're right. I did betray you, I said, but only because I've been bending over backwards for someone who clearly doesn't care. Trevor's anger flared. You're a hypocrite. I've been honest with you the whole time. You can't expect me to change because you've got some fantasy in your head. You knew who I was from the start. As he stormed out, I stood there, the weight of his words sinking in. He was never going to take responsibility for his actions. It was always someone else's fault. Always me. After he left, I headed straight to the art studio. I needed to get my anger out. As I stood before the canvas, I thought back over the past 2 months. My planning, the surprise dates, the little gifts I left for him. I was the one always putting in the effort. While he was out doing God knows what. I was spending hours painting portraits for his friends for free, without so much as a thank you. I grabbed the black and grey paints, slashing the canvas with heavy angry strokes. A dying nature, that's what I was painting. The harsh edges felt like a release, as if my frustration was taking shape before me. But then, my thoughts shifted. I couldn't stop thinking about Travis. Why had he done it? What was his goal with those poems? What was he trying to say? I wiped my brush clean, then switched to lighter colors. Blue, pink, yellow. I wanted to give my nature life again. Bring it back to something peaceful, something that wasn't about anger and confusion. When I went home, I grabbed a book from my locker. As I opened it, a note fluttered to the floor. You view the world in the way that I could. Naively seeing only the surface, like a scared deer, you make me nervous. I stared at the note, my heart pounding. It was from him. But I won't go chasing after Travis just because of a few poems. He's Trevor's brother, for crying out loud. I can't ignore the energy I felt when we were together in the art studio, even for that brief moment. But I'm not ready to admit it, not even to myself. Maybe it was better to stay alone for a while. Stop forcing things. With Trevor, I was blinded by his looks, but we didn't have much else in common. Turns out, I went for the wrong brother after all. I had been avoiding Trevor entirely. He took his pride with him and never reached out either, not even an apology. But I didn't need one. The more distance I got, the more I realized that what I felt for Trevor was never real. It was an illusion, a mistake I was glad to learn from. I wanted to ask Travis why he was leaving me poems in my locker, but this time I wanted to do it right, without dates, just talk. After one class, I decided to act. "Hey," I waved to Travis, catching his attention. "Got 10 minutes? Hey, Rain. Yeah, I do." He tucked his book back into his bag and followed me through the back door of the college into the small, secluded park. "So, how's your day going?" I asked, trying to sound casual as I whistled a random tune. Travis smirked, eyes following a squirrel darting up a tree. "Generic small talk isn't your strong suit, is it?" I blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" He raised an eyebrow, his lips quaking in that familiar sarcastic way. "Are you going to recite a poem to me like you did with my brother?" His words hit like a lightning bolt, freezing me mid-step. I looked at him, stunned. "You already know why I asked you here, don't you?" He leaned against a bench, his shy demeanor giving way to something sharper, more confident. "Took you long enough to figure it out." For a moment, I caught the resemblance to Trevor, not in looks, but in the way that they carried themselves when they let their guard down. "Why did you do it?" I finally asked. He shrugged, looking down at the ground for a moment before meeting my eyes. "I don't know. I guess I'm just figuring myself out. I've always considered myself straight, never thought about a guy that way, but when I started seeing you around campus, something shifted. It felt like a spark, something I couldn't ignore." He took a deep breath, his tone softening. "You're everything I never knew I was looking for, and yeah, maybe I went about it the wrong way." I stepped back slightly, trying to process his words. "It was definitely a bold move," I said, trying to ease the tension. "But I don't think it was stupid. I think it was brave." My voice faltered slightly as I continued. "Because now I'm here and I'm listening." Travis leaned back against the park bench, his gaze fixed on the trees swaying in the breeze. "You know, Rain," he began, his voice calm but piercing, "I think you're afraid of being alone, and that's okay. No one's perfect." His words hit like a soft blow, gentle but uncomfortably accurate. I looked at him, unsure how to respond, so I just let him continue. "I've just observed you," he admitted, glancing my way. "The way you carry yourself, the way you chase after things. You made me feel inspired, like you sparked something in me I didn't even know was there. That's why I started writing, why I keep leaving those notes." I swallowed hard, my heart thudding. "So what now? Are we going to pretend like I did not find out, or does this change things?" Travis hesitated, his brows knitting together as if the question physically hurt him. "I don't know," he finally said, his tone almost apologetic. "You were with my brother, Rain, and look, I'm not trying to judge you, but it's complicated. It's messy." I nodded slowly, my chest tightening. "Trevor's a player. You know that. He didn't care about me the way I thought he did." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know he's a player. Hell, he doesn't even hide it. But it's not just about him. It's about me. I don't know if I can trust what I'm feeling right now, and I don't want either of us to end up regretting something." I looked at him, searching his face for any glimmer of hope. "So, you're saying there's a chance for me to better know you?" Travis exhaled deeply, his lips curving into a small, bittersweet smile. "I don't know." I gestured him to follow me and led him into the art studio. I've shown him the art I've been working on within previous days. It was a silent spring, hard-shaped trees but filled with light colors. "I did this while thinking of you," I said to him, looking at his gaze while he studied my painting. "It's like Nicholas," Travis began, his voice soft but clear. "Nicholas Posen." "Yeah." I cut in, grinning. Except, minus the two naked people. He laughed, the sound warm and easy, lighting up the room. I couldn't help but notice how his smile transformed him. Travis was one of those people who seemed to blend into the background, content to work quietly in the shadows. But now I was paying attention. I couldn't believe I'd overlooked him. He looked like something out of a painting himself, a masterpiece, understated yet captivating. His lean frame, those green eyes framed by glasses that somehow made him even more intriguing, and his hair, a mix of green and black strands, made him seem like he belonged in another world. His hands, soft yet firm from painting, moved with the kind of precision that told stories without words, and his lips, full, red, and perfectly complementing his round face, looked almost distracting. "This art is beautiful," he said, breaking the silence as his finger trailed the edge of my painting. "Almost as beautiful as you." What? No way, he couldn't have just said that. I felt my pulse quicken, my grip tightening on the brush. I don't want to push you into anything. I managed, my voice quieter now, unsure of where this was heading. I just got out of a relationship. You're not, he said, his voice steady but hesitant. I'm just scared, I guess, and I need to talk to my brother. No matter what he was to you, he's still my brother. There it was, the elephant in the room. We both knew this wasn't simple, and yet here we were, standing in the middle of it. We shook hands like we were sealing some strange, unspoken deal. It felt formal, even awkward, but that's Travis. Hard to read. A puzzle wrapped in riddles. He said he was straight, but then there were the poems. And of course, there was Trevor, his brother who I'd been with for 2 months. Everything about this felt complicated, yet I couldn't ignore the pull between us. As I walked out of school, heading home, my attention was drawn to Travis, painting near the schoolyard. Curious about what he was working on, I approached him. "Hey, what are you making?" I asked, my eyes lighting up with curiosity. Travis flinched slightly but quickly relaxed. "Just this horse on a farm, nothing special," he replied casually. "It's surrealism, right? That's my favorite style," I said, my excitement evident. "Mine too," he admitted with a small smile. "Anyone who truly masters it knows how to evoke raw emotion." I tilted my head, studying his painting. "Your horse looks kind of lonely." "Yeah," Travis said thoughtfully, measuring the horse's head with his thumb. "He likes it that way, free to gallop, eat all the grass and apples he wants. It's the kind of freedom he enjoys." "Maybe," I ventured carefully. "He doesn't realize what it's like to have someone by his side, sharing that freedom." Travis looked at me for a moment, but then shifted the subject. "I'm struggling with this bucket. The edges keep coming out rough." "I can help," I offered, gently placing my hands over his on the brush. "Your stroke should go in a zigzag pattern, and if you want it to look like an older wooden bucket, add some patched up holes." As we painted together, I felt his heartbeat quicken through his hand, sending a shiver down my spine. His grip softened, and I noticed his head tilt slightly closer to mine. "Thank you, Rain," he said quietly. "I'll make sure to repay your kindness." "Don't mention it. Glad to help," I replied lightly, brushing off the compliment. But Travis was insistent. "No, really. Never take people's help for granted. Besides, I believe kindness should be returned with kindness." His words caught me off guard. Usually, I was the one going out of my way to help others without expecting anything in return. "Do you ever feel like that horse?" I asked hesitantly. "Sometimes," he admitted, his voice soft. "Poetry has always been my way to stay afloat. I like working in the shadows, expressing myself through art. It's not a bad thing, but I struggle to communicate my feelings." "What about you?" he asked, turning the question on me. "I feel the same," I replied, the answer escaping me faster than I expected. "Sometimes I crave the quiet. Silence has its own charm." Travis smiled, a warm, genuine expression. "I feel like we could sit in a room together, doing our own things in complete silence, and it would still feel perfect. Just enjoying each other's presence." His words made my heart leap in a way I hadn't anticipated. "I think the same," I said softly, unable to hide the happiness in my voice. The smell of paint and turpentine filled the air as I worked on my latest canvas, pouring all of my emotions into bold strokes of deep blue and black. The studio was my refuge, quiet and still until the door creaked open behind me. I turned, startled, and there he was, Travis. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, his shy expression the same as the first time we'd shared this space. His glasses caught the dim light, and for a moment, he looked almost unsure if he should have come in. "What are you doing here?" I asked, setting down my brush. "I thought I might find you here," he admitted, stepping aside. I was wondering if you wanted to go on a walk with me." I hesitated for a second, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Yeah, okay," I said, grabbing my jacket. The air outside was crisp, and the faint scent of spring lingered in the breeze. We walked side by side in silence for a while, the night wrapping around us like a blanket. Travis finally spoke. "What have you been up to these past 2 months? We haven't really talked." I shrugged. "Managing, keeping myself busy, painting mostly." He nodded, kicking a loose pebble on the path. "I've been thinking a lot about you," he said suddenly, his voice soft but steady. "I didn't know how to say this, and it scares me to admit it, but I want to try something." I stopped walking, my heart thudded in my chest. "What do you mean?" He smiled nervously. "Just trust me. Close your eyes." I hesitated, but I did as he asked. The cool air kissed my skin, and for a moment everything was quiet, except for the sound of my breathing. Then I felt his hand brush against my cheek, gentle and hesitant, and then it happened. His lips pressed against mine, soft but firm, and a heat I'd never felt before coursed through me. The kiss was slow, deliberate, and electric, like fireworks exploding in the darkness. His hands pulled me closer as his lips moved against mine. I could taste the faint sweetness of him, and it felt as if the world had fallen away, leaving only the two of us in that moment. When he finally pulled away, my chest was heaving, and I opened my eyes to see him staring at me, his green eyes wide with wonder. "Wow," he whispered, his breath warm against my lips. "That was magical." I couldn't speak, still lost in the feeling. Travis cleared his throat, his cheeks tinged pink. "I wrote something for you." He took a deep breath, his voice soft but sure as he recited. "A chance is fragile, fleeting, rare, like catching stars within the air. But if you'll trust, I'll hold it tight and guard it through the darkest night. For what we could become, I see a love as boundless as the sea." I stared at him, my heart racing. At that moment, I didn't care about the past or the complications. "Travis," I said, my voice trembling with every possible outcome, "will you give us, a chance?" His smile lit up. "I would love to. What about your brother? To heck with him and his limitations," Travis said firmly. I hesitated because I thought he actually had real feelings for you, but over time it's clear. He just wants to be adored, and it doesn't matter by who. Those words should have hurt, but they didn't. I felt nothing for Trevor anymore. What I felt for Travis was different. At first it was about poetry, but now I knew it was so much more. I leaned in, and this time I kissed him first. He responded with an urgency that matched mine, his hands sliding to my neck as he held me gently against a nearby tree. His lips were warm, searching as they trailed from my mouth to my jaw. My hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer as our breaths grew heavier and the world around us faded away. But then reality hit. This was still a public park. I pulled back, my chest heaving. "We're not exactly alone," I said, breathless but grinning. He laughed softly, brushing a thumb over my flushed cheek. "Guess we'll have to save this for later." When I got home that night, my heart wasn't just fluttering, it was running a marathon. Butterflies had turned into an entire symphony of emotions. Travis wanted this, he wanted me. I couldn't believe it. The next day, I walked into the art studio and froze. There was Travis, standing in all of his glory, the light streaming through the windows, catching his green hair and soft features. He looked radiant, completely lost in his work, but something about him just shone. "Hey," I said, stepping inside. He looked up, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Hey, you." "I can't even explain how happy I am," I admitted. He set his brush down and walked over, his hands slipping into mine. "And yesterday you made me feel like I'm finally alive." Before I could say more, the door creaked open. We both turned to see Trevor standing there. His expression was guarded, his eyes bouncing between the two of us. Hey," he said awkwardly. "Hey," I replied, the tension in the room thick enough to cut. After a moment of silence, Trevor sighed. "So, you two, huh?" Travis stepped closer to me, his hand brushing against mine. "Yeah," he said softly. Trevor studied his brother for a long moment, then asked, "You really like him, huh?" "More than anything," Travis replied without hesitation. Trevor let out a small, dry laugh. "Well, I'm not one to get in the way of someone else's happiness. You and I, we're different people, Rain. I think I was just physically attracted to you. That's it." I nodded, relieved that there was no hostility in his tone. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Trevor." "Yeah," he said, giving a small, almost bittersweet smile before walking out. Travis found me in the studio again. "Hey," he said, holding up a flyer. "There's a poetry reading tonight. Want to come with me?" "Of course," I said, smiling. As we walked to the event, he stopped me on the sidewalk, his hands framing my face. "You make me want to believe in things I never thought I could have. I've never felt like this before." "Neither have I," I whispered, leaning in to kiss him. At the reading, as the final poet stepped off the stage, Travis stood up. My heart skipped a beat as he walked to the mic, pulling a folded piece of paper from his pocket. His voice was steady as he begun. "You're the brush to my canvas, the light to my dark, a melody I never knew I needed, a flame that lit my spark. I feared the unknown, yet with you I dive in, because love isn't safe, it's where everything begins." When he finished, he looked at me and the applause faded into the background as our eyes locked. I didn't need words, I just knew. That night, as we walked hand in hand under the stars, I realized I found my home in Travis. As a painter, I've learned to trust the process, to embrace the messy strokes that eventually create something beautiful. Being with Trevor taught me the difference between chasing a fantasy and finding something real. With Travis, I didn't just imagine paradise, I found it. This journey had its ups and downs, and I'd never forgive myself if I had caused a rift between the brothers. Thankfully, Trevor came to accept our relationship, and I continued seeing Travis. Each date felt like a masterpiece in progress, building into something extraordinary. I fell for him deeply and told him I loved him after 5 months of dating. Now, our relationship is thriving. We're planning to move to a new city to finish our master's degree and follow our artistic dreams. Together. Are you a trust the process person? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our rainbow force and stay wholesome.